Hello, welcome to my channel Dharma Makes, and welcome to this project. This time I made a bubbling cauldron out of a soup mug. I was looking for something else in Poundland and I came across this soup mug that had the perfect shape for a cauldron minus the handle. To turn it into a cauldron, first I had to address the shiny texture of the ceramic. And for that, I'm going to be using some kitchen towel. Peeling this apart was very satisfying, so here's the sound. So I peeled apart one sheet of a kitchen towel into the 3 layers, and I've tore it up in more manageable pieces. And I'm going to be using a watered down mixture of PVA glue to adhere it to the surface of the ceramic mug. I am using paper towel this time because I knew I wanted to manipulate the tissue itself into these vertical wrinkles, and if I used normal tissue paper it would have torn way too much before I could manipulate it into the shape that I wanted. But I didn't waste a lot, it was just one sheet. The handle is a problem, and I did not have any power tools or anything that would allow me to safely cut off the handle of the ceramic mug. And after a little bit of research I learned that there is no safe way to try and break it off. So instead I'm just going to pretend like the handle doesn't exist, and then later I will address it by masking it. So after it dried overnight, it became kind of translucent, but the tissue paper texture is there, and it also makes for a really good surface to receive the paint. So I'm adding a generous coat of black acrylic paint. I didn't actually have to do 2 coats, but I did retouch areas inside of those wrinkles that I missed on the first pass. Black is usually very good at opaque coverage. So I'm just painting the entire exterior of the mug and some of the inside lip. The plan is to actually fill the cauldron, but to have the texture continue on the inside was important. Now, to bring out all of that wonderful texture that I worked on, I am using a very, very light green. I know it looks sort of whitish, but it does have a tint of green, and I'm just dry brushing it all over. This brightens it a bit too much, but it really did manage to bring out that texture. Originally, the idea was to use this cauldron to make a bookend piece, so I really needed the weight. So that's why I'm adding a little bit of construction sand kind of halfway up the mug for the extra weight. The mug itself was pretty weighty, so this might have been overkill. But at the time, this seemed like the right approach. And I'm filling the top part of the mug with just some scrunched up aluminium foil. As you can see, I'm just gluing it roughly in place with hot glue. And I'm also kind of like patching little holes, because now I'm covering the entire surface and I didn't want it to just seep down and waste a lot of hot glue stick. When it's it was still tacky, I took some of this fake moss and just sort of spread it on the surface for a little bit of texture variation. So I want the cauldron to look like it's bubbling, like it's cooking now and it's bubbling. And I've racked my brains to think about how to make perfect semispheres for the bubbles. And then I realized I have all of these adhesive half pearls. They will make the perfect bubbles. So I just picked a variety of different sizes and sort of arranged them in different clusters, trying to make it look organic. I actually even googled a few images of boiling stew, to be honest, for some inspiration. And I've just pressed them into the hot glue. And this is what it looks like when it's fully set. So of course I don't want it this color. I want it to have a nice greenish, kind of yucky, but also interesting looking green concoction boiling. So first of all, I'm applying 2 coats of this really dark green. And when those layers have dried, I am using this brighter olive green to paint all over the surface. I am painting almost the entire surface, but I'm not pressing in near the bases of the bubbles. And I'm going to use some more of that leftover dark green paint to mix in around the edges, as you can see right now. And I think that looks pretty good. Now to address the exterior of the cauldron that got a bit too bright, I made a very thin wash with black shellac ink. That way the highlights from my dry brushing persist, but it's darkened back down. And I've also made another wash with yellow and green shellac ink for the concoction inside. So I have moved away from the idea of bookend, but I still need a sort of platform for the cauldron to sit on. And for that, I am using a piece of foam core. As you saw, I kind of just fit measured, and now I'm using a sharp knife to just round down those edges so that it doesn't look like a rectangle. I'm also marking the spot of where I want the cauldron to go, and I'm going to make individual paving stones from this paper cup holder. It's sort of like the same thing that egg cartons are made out of. That's why I kept it, because it has a really nice, interesting texture. And I'm just cutting out irregular, rounded shapes for the individual stones. And yeah, I didn't even use up the whole paper cup holder, only basically half. And to seal in some of those exposed foam edges, I'm just using a lighter, kind of quickly running the fire around it. So the holes in the bubbly nature of the foam will be sealed, and it will be easier to paint. And I'm just using some PVA glue to adhere down those individual stones for the floor. And the reason I marked where the cauldron will go is that there is no point for me to waste putting down the stones under it where it essentially won't be seen. But I'm sort of working with the existing shapes that I have, and I'm just placing them down sort of like in a mosaic pattern. You can often see floors like this in like medieval interiors. After I finished gluing down the stones, I am making a mixture of tile grout, PVA glue, and water, making it just a little bit more fluid this time. And this is what I'm going to use for, well, grout. I want to fill in those spaces between the stones, but I still don't want it to be level. I just want it to look like the real deal. I'm sure you understand my meaning. And by the end, I'm actually removing some of the extra from the surface of the stones to get back that really nice egg carton texture. Now to address the handle. I was given the idea to make a workstation right by the cauldron, and I really liked that. So I'm just using more foam core to make a sort of workbench that's kind of attached to the cauldron itself, following the outline of the lip. First of all, to start with, I made it much too large, but it's a good start, and it was encouraging me that I was kind of liking where it was going. And here I am rounding down the edges prematurely. At this stage, it's way too big. I'm also going to be using a strip of regular cardboard to be kind of like the exterior wall of this workbench. And because it's corrugated cardboard, it's actually really easy to just bend around the nice rounded edges of that table. At this stage, I realized though that it's too big, and with those cardboard walls, it's gonna cover up too much of my base, which is a shame after I worked so hard on the stones. So I returned my attention to the ground, and I'm applying a base coat of this nice chocolatey brown. I didn't go with the black and gray because I didn't want it to blend together with the cauldron itself. I thought a warmer tone will be more of a definition. So after the brown has dried, I am using a nice brownish orange color, and I'm just picking out individual stones and painting them for an interesting color variation. I know it looks very stark at this stage and very unnatural, but the processes that will be applied will make it look like part of a whole thing. And besides the orange, I also decided to use some nice olive green. When I'm done with painting the stones, I am dry brushing the same very light green all over the place, and this is going to again bring out the texture of the piece, even the edges of the sealed foam core. It just looks like it could be something that's part of a bigger environment. I really like dry brushing. It's a fantastic technique, and it takes so little effort to achieve great results. Now, to make everything look more realistic, I made this wash with some transparent brown and yellow shellac ink. And as you see, I'm generously applying it to the entire surface of this floor piece, toning everything down, making it look like stone. And as you can see, it was worth painting the individual stones in the first place. At this point, I've realized that there may be a better way to do the workstation. So I just cut down the cardboard to a thin strip to go just around the perimeter. And I'm going to be using that purple faux suede fabric that I have on screen right now. And I was inspired by those old-timey sinks that had kind of like a fabric front instead of a cabinet. And I thought, that would be a really good way for me to not take up all the space with the cardboard, so that my hard work on the floor would not be wasted, and it would look really nice, and it would look quite refined and rich. So I'm just using hot glue and my scissors to manipulate this fabric and wrap the entire table section very neatly. And first I addressed the curve and then the outside edges, and I sort of made these nice artificial folds. In real life, the weight of the fabric drapes itself nicely due to the gravity. But at miniature scale, there is too little of the fabric for it to fold naturally. So using glue to force it into these nice folds really helps. And after I've wrapped the top, I actually attached it to the mug, and I'm just using the leftover fabric to nicely wrap it and fold it around the curve of the cauldron, effectively masking the handle of the mug, forever hiding its origins. And I think the purple fabric is reminiscent of luxury, and I sort of like that. If this was a potion brewing station in a magic shop, I expect the owner would like some more refined things. And there we are. Now my cauldron and workstation can be united with the base, and I do exactly that with just another application of generous hot glue. And they match perfectly up, and it fulfills my vision. Now, on top of the workstation, I want to have a chopping board with kind of a setup of some cutting left in the middle. So I'm using this small piece of laser cut wood, and I've sanded down the edges so they're perfect, and I'm also staining just the very edge to bring back that dark color. And I really like it because it has very visible wood grain. I have this miniature butter knife. It's made of metal, so I can file it and sort of sharpen it, give it an edge. And I'm also going to paint the handle brown so that it looks like it's from a different material, maybe wood. And this way it's going to look a little bit more like a proper knife. I have this miniature pumpkin, which is actually a seed pod of a puka plant, and I'm just honestly cutting it in half and then cutting one of the halves into slices and sort of a quarter. But I didn't like that the interior of the seed pod was almost the same color as the chopping board itself. So I just took some yellow paint and carefully painted the inside of each slice and each piece. Another element that I want to add to my workstation is this little piece that's actually a miniature Christmas light reproduction. It's plastic, but I think it has the potential of being a very nice vial of something. So I just got rid of the flashing and the jump ring at the top, and I've also filed the bottom a little bit so that it has a flat surface to rest on. I also sort of want to add a recipe book, or maybe I don't know, like an incantation potion book or something, and I thought a few loose pages would also be a good idea. And now on to gluing things on. As I said, I'm attaching the little miniature pumpkin and the knife on the chopping board, and sort of arranging the pieces in a way that looks like natural randomness. I'm also attaching the chopping board itself with PVA glue straight onto the work surface. And now I realize I haven't left quite enough space for the book, so I'm just pushing it a tiny bit over. And I'm attaching the pages one by one in a little bit of a disarray, and the book at the slight angle. I have these little tiny sprigs of leaves in different colors. I think they could look like some sort of cooking ingredient, greenery. And I'm just gluing them down as well. I also want to add a bottle, a tiny little potion, and a jar. And I have this little tiny glass vial, but I want to fill it and make it interesting. So first of all, I'm just adding some shimmering copper metallic paint, and then adding some white seed beads. And I'm not filling up the jar completely, I'm leaving some space. And I've added a little bit of brown stain and a little bit of water. And I'm using this small paintbrush to just swirl things around. And then I put the cork back in. And I think this has helped me create a sort of jar of pickled eggs. And to attach the plastic and the glass things, I am using hot glue instead of PVA glue. It's just faster and easier to set them in place. Unfortunately, I did have a little bit of spillage though, so I'm going to have to address it. But before that, I want to add more pages and a few scrolls to the base as well. I have a stash of miniature scrolls that I made a long time ago, and they are coming in handy because I tend to use them a lot in my magic themed projects. I think they're just really nice elements. So to hide the overspillage of the hot glue, I'm just using some PVA glue and some of this fake moss, and I'm just shoving it in the little corners and seams to fill in some of the gaps. And I think it could look like some spilled herbs or something. And that's it. My little arrangement is done. And the cauldron with the workstation and the nice stone floor And I'm really happy with this project. I like the way the miniature knife seems to have an edge and the way the whole project came together. I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it. I make lots of different crafts on my channel, miniatures like this, but also embroidery and all sorts of crafty projects. So if this is something you're interested in, please do go over and visit my channel. Maybe even consider subscribing. I will be publishing more crafty videos every week. I hope you're having a nice day. Thank you for watching. Bye!